Work at a fairly rural park in the front kiosk. Super slow day, maybe 10 cars came in for the day. Most of them had already left. Nothing to do, so sit in the kiosk and watch out the window with both doors open for airflow and circulation. All of a sudden I hear someone say, "Hey!" Turn around expecting a visitor in the back door. No one's there. I go out to investigate, make a lap around the kiosk. No one there. Spend the rest of my shift uneasy and a little paranoid. Also hear stories about some workers seeing faces in the windows of the historical house we have on the property. Another one. Was out on a backpacking trip with a class. We were all sleeping in our own tents. I was dead asleep. All of a sudden I wake up and hear what sounds like someone say, "Hey, watch this." My tent starts shaking like someone grabbed the top and started going to town. Still half asleep, I go, "Hey, what the fuck?" Tent stops shaking. Don't hear anything for the rest of the night. Morning comes and I check around my tent. No evidence that anything had been there. Peck related, my tent on that trip. Hey, watch this. Lamau. For a while in Shasta, there was a dude attacking people with a chainsaw, and I saw him run into someone's campfire and get fucked up. That's like saying, "So anyway, I skydived with a clown." You're gonna need to say a bit more than just that, Lamau. Came across this in Slovakia. Not deep in the woods, but a few kilometers away from any village. In a valley surrounded by forest as I was on my way to a ruined castle. Not soul around. Gloomy weather. Nothing paranormal, but I've got two good stories. I'll start with story 1. Mimi, 28 male, with one of my best friends, 29 male, and his girl, 26 female. Camp on the flat part to the left in the pic. There's an RV park about 2 miles away at the base where the photo was taken. Came to this spot last minute because previous camping spot was literally being gatekept by some Filipino bitch who put a gate over a public road. Decided to come here to this backup spot since we spent 3 hours driving. We get to the lake at 4 p.m. Hike 2 miles and camp off of the trail. Gather wood, cook dinner, break out a box of wine. All normal camping shit. His girlfriend goes to bed in tent. We stay up getting drunk and smoking cigs. Run out of firewood. Oh well. We grab some wood to keep an insanely small fire until it goes out. Still have a liter of wine. We figure we'll kill it to make packing out easy. Hear leaves rustling and twigs snapping. Turn our headlamps on and we see 2 weirdos in their early 20s, one of which is carrying a corgi over their shoulders in the pitch dark, no light at 1 a.m. in the morning. We look at them and say hello, and they kind of sheepishly go, "Oh, hey," and walk off all sketchy. Dog as silent as can be. They continue past our campsite and walk to the trail. We don't see them again. Still have no idea what the fuck they were doing since the trail looped around and we didn't see them again, which is really strange. Didn't realize how fucked up it was until the morning when we realized they walked just straight into the woods with no light wearing regular street clothes. We assumed they were walking to one of the cabins, but the nearest one was like 2/3 miles away, and they would be walking on pretty rough terrain. Maybe they had a canoe or some shit, but also weird because we would have seen them earlier in the day when we were set up. Normal weekend overnight hike. As I rounded the ridge, I noticed the forest get much lusher and darker than anywhere else I'd been so far in this park. Didn't pay it much mind, figured it was just some microclimate and enjoyed the change of scenery. Then I felt the dread. Kept going, scanning for bears, cougars, more intently than usual, my subconscious alerting me to a real threat. In my extra scanning, I noticed a path through the trees off the trail. Didn't appear frequently, trafficked as the duff was undisturbed, but the trees were missing enough for it to stick out. The dread I had been feeling entering this area had been replaced with alarms screaming in my head, and I had to see what was down there since I was planning on camping nearby. Graveyard, not on the map. Paid my respects by reading all the graves that were legible and wishing them well. When I returned to the trail, the forest seemed friendlier, and I took that as my sign that I was in the clear. Researched it when I got home. It was a known graveyard, but just wasn't placed on the map for whatever reason. Wish I had known about it so I could just chalk it up to paranoia. But I had no idea it was there. But I sure felt it. Was walking on a path at sunset through some woods. Set on a stone was what appeared to be a dude, but the lower half of his left leg wasn't there. Couldn't see him super clear, but he looks up. I give a quick glance behind, looking back again, and he just straight up wasn't there. Was weird. Never hallucinated anything similar. Excuse potato quality of photo story number 2. Camping with same friend minus his girl. Hike up camel humps in VT in November. Stay at one of the many tent platforms near LT. Start cooking meals, super windy so very small fire. As we start settling down and having a beer, notice 3 headlamps crossing the ridge in picture. We turn on our lantern so we don't freak them out. 3 small boys, one visibly coughing and ill. They don't say a word. Dad comes up a while later hauling a big ass Coleman tent in a 70-liter bag. Man was a champ. Kids talking amongst themselves, fucking around with sticks and stuff. Talk to Dad for a bit. Set up tent. See and hear their butane stove turn on through the tent. Was on for 6 minutes, then all lights went off. Weird enough, out of 6 tent platforms, they chose the one closest to us. Next morning, Dad's a bit more social and talks with us. Says he came from Massachusetts and was doing some hiking with the kids. Says he has a van that they travel in. Asks us about a shelter/cabin on a long trail. We tell him it snowed in more likely than not. Motherfucker says he's going up it with his kids. Advise him not to since it's probably locked. Does it anyways. Oh well. Walk back to parking lot to see his van. It's a small SUV packed to the brim with what looks like all their shit. Still convinced that dude murdered his wife and took the kids and was hiding them. Middle of the school week too when he was up there with them. Cliche and maybe not very out, but my brother noticed consistent, unexplainable lights in the skies, so we all stayed up to watch them one time. And wordlessly, we would look at each other as soon as we saw them happen. You hear the term impossible motion so often in UFO reports, but when you actually see something move like that in the sky, you really understand the feeling of seeing something that appears physically impossible. Recently camped in Nevada with my family. Millions of black crickets wandering around, and we saw a giant white glowing object in the sky at dusk. Figured it was a weather balloon. Camping as a kid, sometimes we would hear wolves outside of our tents, and the next morning there would be footprints everywhere, and our food boxes dragged halfway down the beach. Same place someone had their face eaten the year before. Hiking with my dog in Sweden. Walking through a forest and all is well. We are up on the low mountain among pines, moss, and sparse vegetation, and then the tracks lead down to a kind of gorge between the cliffs. Down there it's much darker and more dense vegetation. I start to feel a bit creeped out, like a feeling of general dread and uneasiness. My dog is acting nervous too. Then we come across a tree with parts of women's clothing hanging from it. A ripped shirt, a dirty bra among other things. I refrain from shitting my pants but walk away fast. Still with a creepy feeling of being watched when I continue on through the main trail. It only stops after I meet another dude with his dog passing by me the opposite way. In the spring of 2022, a friend and I went hunting for bear in the Umpqua National Forest outside Tiller, Oregon. There remained a bit of snow, maybe a foot or two, and we ended up hiking to the top of the meadow, next to a spring. Waiting, I ended up losing my chance at a bear after waiting several hours when my friend ended up in a coughing fit and the bear that was a good distance away at the bottom of the meadow bolted. That part is irrelevant. We ended up leaving shortly after because it was late, and by the time we were almost off of the trail, it was sunset. We were maybe 200 yards from the trailhead when we encountered a couple who were just getting onto the trail. The man had nothing but a very small day pack, and the woman had nothing except a baby on a baby carrier on her chest. They seemed extremely nervous, and in my autism I assumed it was because of the hunting rifle slung over my shoulder. The man shakily asked how it was going. I said it was going fine, just got done for the day. My friend and I kept walking, and I realized it sounded like they weren't moving, and I looked back, and they were just staring at us. When we looked back, they hurriedly kept walking down the trail towards the east. We encountered them at a split that occurs 0.1 miles from the trailhead. When we got to the trailhead, the only other vehicle beside ours was a blue Toyota FJ Cruiser with Idaho license plates. The car was completely empty. We drove off, and it really didn't set in how weird the interaction was until a half hour down the dirt roads. How strange it is that they were getting on a snow-covered trail right at sunset when the closest town, Tiller, which is only a couple of buildings, was nearly an hour of driving away. They didn't even seem equipped at all to camp overnight. I still don't know what was going on with that, if those people are still alive or not. Peck related. It's that area in the fall.
It don't mean a thing. All you gotta do is sing.